Well, welcome to Reading Redux, or if you've stopped by before, welcome back. Just a little shout out to the Life on Books podcast guys. They posted a video about encouraging people to create book channels through various social media just to talk about books. And in this climate where we're seeing a decline in people who read regularly, I thought it was a great message. And I just happened to put a comment on there that I had started a channel, just to talk about books. Wasn't too concerned about metrics or anything, but of course, always looking for more engagement and more people have stopped by and subscribed and viewed videos and left likes and comments. So I really appreciate that. It's been a minute, and life's been a little crazy, in some good ways and definitely some not so good ways, personally and professionally. So my reading's been a little sporadic and slower than usual. So I'm a slow reader to begin with. But I have read a few books since the last video. I think everybody realizes that your reading experience sometimes can have almost as much to do with where you are in your headspace as it does the material itself. Sometimes you try to read a book at a certain point in your life, and it's not working. It's not the right time, but you revisit it at a later point, and it's a book you really enjoy. So I think, to be fair to these books, I don't want to talk too much about whether I enjoyed them or how much, just because it's just been a weird time. But one thing that I thought of that kind of pulled these very different works together was just the concept of atmosphere, or tone, mood, and along with that, sort of dynamics, to use more musical analogies. Yeah, so the three books that I read were in order from the last video. The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. That was an ebook, so I'll put the cover up there. And after that, I read The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafon. And I just finished a short novel by the Danish author Solvej Balle, on the calculation of volume. Can't really. The title text is very small. Cool cover though. Which was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize. So as I said, these are very very different works, subject matter, atmosphere, tone, and so the latter, I think, was very strong within each work, and they were very different in terms of the tone that they set and the atmosphere that they created. And I think regardless of how much I enjoyed the stories or the writing, I think they all certainly were very effective in creating a certain atmosphere throughout the work. So, Parable of the Sower, it's often referred to as kind of a post-apocalyptic story. To me, it's more apocalyptic. It's not quite after the apocalypse. It's kind of during the apocalypse. So I think this is has a renewed popularity. It's always been a respected work, and she was, a highly respected speculative fiction author. But both in the story and the time in which it's supposed to take place, it's received quite a bit of current attention. So it was written in the 90s, but it takes place starting in late 2024 into 2025. So essentially now. And a lot of it's sort of the degradation of society. Things are just falling apart. There's ravages due to climate change, fires, droughts. There's exaggerated, but essentially projected as a reality. Class distinctions, wealth disparity, even more exaggerated than certainly at the time in the 90s. And we've certainly seen a lot, right? We've seen lots of effects of climate change. We've seen, the rise of billionaires, individuals worth hundreds of billions of dollars, while, wages for the working class have, remained relatively stagnant for decades. So, maybe we're not quite at the point in which the story picks up, but in terms of the direction that things have moved in, and the real effects of those natural and societal changes, I think are, it seems like a pretty prescient work. Maybe a cautionary tale. So in terms of, it follows a teenager named Lauren Olomini. It's really her story. She is a black teenager living in a Los Angeles suburb. They're in kind of a sort of a gated community, but not a wealthy gated community, more like a middle class. But at this stage, people who still have homes feel like they have to protect them from ravaging hordes and scavengers and opportunistic, desperate people who don't have homes or incomes or ready sources of sustenance. And her father's a Christian pastor in the community, and she she begins to reject the Judeo-Abrahamic God that is typically portrayed as eternal and invariant, and she jots down, along with her chronicling of what's happening around her, her thoughts and her. It's all based on a notion that God is change, and God is not eternal and invariant. God is change, and we are an agent of change. And so her idea is that God can be affected by change, and affect change. And so that really, it's kind of a very Buddhist concept that really the only thing that is constant is change, right? So, and I think this sort of gives her, where this is going. She starts to call her kind of religion / philosophy earth seed, and she sees this as a way forward and out of the post-apocalyptic times. So yeah. So anyway, and that kind of gives her a very pragmatic view towards how to handle constant crises around her and kind of take the bull by the horns. Yeah, so it follows kind of her escape from her community that gets targeted, and picking up others along the way and introducing them to her vision. There's a few other elements thrown in there. She is what her father calls a sharer, so she has extreme empathy. So she literally feels others' pain to the point where it's dangerous to her, especially if she needs to defend herself. And there's to add to the chaos and mayhem, there's a popular drug that people are abusing that gives you sort of a euphoric high when you see flames, like if you stare at fire. And so these people essentially become, literally pyromaniacs who are abusing this drug. So as you can imagine, this is it's bleak. It's very raw, and it's constant tension. You never feel like anyone can let their guard down. You feel like you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop at all times. And I think it's effective in the sense that that is essentially how you would imagine these people are feeling, who are just trying to survive and escape the craziness and the violence, and look for something better, anything that provides any sort of peace and stability and necessities. Yeah, and it's pretty constant. So and that's something that I'll sort of circle back to after mentioning the other two books. So The Shadow of the Wind is a very different story. It's kind of a modern Gothic novel. I think it's often characterized as by the Spanish author Carlos Ruiz Zafon. And the story follows Daniel, who, as a young boy, whose father owns a kind of, I don't know if it's an antiquarian bookstore, but in Barcelona in the 40s. So this is post-Spanish Civil War, kind of during and after World War II. So a lot of political strife that has led to a lot of tensions and a lot of atrocities that people are still trying to recover from, and kind of only speak about in hushed tones. Yeah, and so he gets introduced as a young boy to this kind of mysterious, secretive crypt called the Cemetery of Forgotten Books. And so when he reaches a certain age, his father brings him to this secretive place and says that he can't tell anybody about this, but he goes in and he's allowed to pick one book to take from this cemetery of forgotten books. And he lands on this book called Shadow of the Wind by an author named Julian Carrick's. And he falls in love with the book. We don't find out too much about the specific plot of the book, but he just falls in love with the world that it creates and the story, and he becomes obsessed with the author Julian Carrick's, and he looks for other works to read by him, and it turns out it's very difficult. And then he comes to find out through his inquiries that somebody has been finding remaining copies from this author who has died and burning them, so destroying whatever copies of his books they can find. And he encounters this person who's kind of disfigured, and everything's always under mysterious circumstances. So this comes back to the atmosphere. This is everything's very mysterious and dark. It seems like it's always raining. Everybody's always hiding in shadows. The Cemetery of Forgotten Books is like this eerie crypt like space that you have to almost leave. He has to leave sort of a marker so he can find his way back to certain areas there, because it's it's like a labyrinth. And then it follows his life as he gets older. It's a little bit of coming of age within the story, but he continues to try to find out exactly what happened to Julian Carrick's, and brings in other characters within kind of the parts of Barcelona that he knows. On top of everything, I think my microphone battery is low, so I'll try to speed this up. Anyway, very, very dark, mysterious. Gothic is a good descriptive tone for this. An really enjoyable story. Huge international bestseller. I can see why. Maybe if I were in a different headspace, it would have been even more engaging. But certainly kept me with the story. And then the third work, as I mentioned, was this short novel, which is, I guess, the first in what's supposed to be a series of 7 on the calculation of volume, which is the English title by the Danish author Solvej Balle. Like I said, shortlisted for the International Booker. That's how I heard about it. So this is kind of a time loop story. So of course that immediately brings Groundhog Day to mind. It's very much not a rom-com type story. In fact, the character who's kind of stuck in the same day over and over, Tara Selter, she is married, happily married, loves her partner, and if anything, this is putting distance between them, because this is only her reality. She seems to be the only one that is reliving this day with memories intact. There's some differences in that she, if she is affected or she affects something, it actually persists into the next repetition of the day. So if she consumes something, it's gone, which is not true for the other people in the story, who sort of are really repeating this day literally. So she knows exactly when things will happen. And it's really just her chronicling her experience reliving this day over and over. So this can see this story is not for everyone. It is a little repetitive in the beginning, which let's face it, that's what the story is about, right? That this woman's life has become, in a sense, repetitive, and that she's reliving the 18th of November over and over and over again. But it does sort of gradually, you sort of gradually see her evolution of her thought processes, her attitude towards this experience that she seems to be stuck in. And the mood here is quiet and contemplative, and you kind of feel what she's feeling as she's kind of stuck in this loop. So yeah, I'm not going to say too much more. I think, like I said, these three books, I think, did an effective job of creating this atmosphere, this tone. It does get carried out throughout the work. I felt for each one of them. That can be fine. As in music, you can have a very quiet, moody piece, which doesn't have a lot of dynamics necessarily. But if it's, if there's some draw, the melody is so compelling that that can work. Sometimes a story is more engaging if there's more dynamics, like a piece of music or food, right? Something can taste wonderful, but if it's, one flavor, one texture throughout, right? We often say that the dish is like a one note, right? Using another more musical analogies. So in other words, like it can sort of lose its appeal, or not always, but it can. So yeah, I guess my question to you is, what particular atmosphere or moods are you drawn to most in works of fiction, and are you okay with stories that kind of stay there throughout, or do you prefer more dynamics? Tension alternating with, um, quiet or stability, or even stories that tend to alternate between narratives, or does it matter? For me, I think, like music or food, right? Sometimes I think that's okay. Um, you know, if I have a good risotto, or I make a good risotto, yeah, it can be a little bit one note, but if it's really good, it will get devoured. Um, yeah. So anyway, I think that's kind of what these three very different works made me think of, because I think they were very effective in that way. Okay. Hopefully, life will sort of settle down a little bit, and reading will be a little bit more consistent. But thanks again for stopping by.